Hi everyone,
Hi Leila.
welcome
Hi.
to our live Google Hangout on the book Veronika Decides to Die by Paulo Coelho. We are a bit late because we had some technical difficulties in finding the start button, but here we are. The book follows the story of a young woman, I think she's in her 20s or something, who decides to commit suicide, and after her attempt, she ends up in a mental hospital, goes through several experiences, and ends up also leaving, or rather escaping, the hospital. So the book starts with her kind of being depressed, kind of being disillusioned about life, the world, how things are, where I suppose many of us have that experience of, why are we here? What's the point? Am I just here to be born, go to school, get a job, start a family, and then what? That's kind of the question she asks herself. And she's also very much unhappy with the superficial nature of all of her relationships. So about this first part of the book, what do you guys have to share?
I think that it's really interesting how this seemingly very normal girl with her life and how she describes her life, or we are introduced to her circumstances, living in Slovenia and Ljubljana, and how circumstances are for her. This 20-year-old book is from 1997. And how that life is like about, she's young and she's working and she has some thoughts about life that are very normal, although they are not really healthy in totality of them, because it brings her to like this conclusion that it's not worth of living. So really, the idea that she that normal type of life, being a busy, can't remember who she's working with something, and she has this ordinary life, seeing friends, going partying, doing whatever, normal things, and reading magazines and so on, meeting people at cafes, and all these things she does is like seeming very normal, and still her mind and her thinking draws her to making the conclusion that it's better here without me, sort of. So it's really interesting to see how this very, what shall I say, supportive and normal structure around her leads her to the decision of choosing suicide. So that's really interesting. Type of pattern there. It's how normal it is, seemingly.
Right, because usually you would assume that someone wants to commit suicide because they went through some kind of traumatic experience or something really intense happened to them.
Yeah.
That caused them to commit suicide.
Yeah.
I like the way you say it's so normal and ordinary, yet not healthy at all. I could so much relate with the beginning, with her thoughts. I would, in fact, relate as much that I had immense reactions. I didn't want to continue to read the book. That was like reading my own back chat, like reading, it was written out what I think about my life. And as you now mentioned, I consider it, I have a pretty normal life. I'm no one special, I work, and yet I have this experience of being in a hamster wheel, and there's no meaning to it. I will just, it will, as she's describing the path, I see how I will work until I die. So why not? But the difference was, and I think that was the reason why I didn't wanted to continue to reading. I am not as courageous to have the courage to kill myself. So I'm just in it, and so I think that was why I resisted. Like, I never had thoughts of suicide. I was just in my hamster wheel, and being very automatic and zombie-like in my life. So that was like a very this book pushed me to look at this, how I'm accepting this normal, ordinary life that is yet not very healthy.
So what would you say in your experience, Aga, is like, what about a normal life is it that kind of creates that experience of you just want to get out of it and kind of want to break out of that normality?
Mm.
Or maybe you can give examples of the type of thoughts you would have to kind of paint a clear picture for whoever hasn't read the book.
I think it's the thoughts itself create the prison, how we define normality, and we always justify what's normal in the way that we do not. It's like a society's convention to see what's normal and how your life should be. So for me, it was, I had never that, what can I do to come out of this? It was, this is normal to feel like that and to live like that and to be in that. And
right. Also, when she talks about it, it's kind of like in a very victimized mode, like, oh, people expect everyone to be the same and this is expected of me and there's all these things that's not cool in the world. At the same time, she's not really doing anything about it, or
yes.
maybe stepping out of those lines of normality herself. She's kind of like, well, I'm just a victim of my circumstances.
But she's doing actually something. She wants to kill us, to kill herself. So this is the door, the only door she is seeing.
Yes, because she actually believes her thoughts, and in that, if you stay in that frame of mind, then yes, the only way out is to kill yourself, because you so believe you don't have power to change yourself, or what she experiences, that the world doesn't allow her to be herself, that it's too demanding. And because she's not pushing herself to be herself despite of all the societal norms, she feels like the only way out is by actually killing herself.
Yes, and how I relate to that too is that you actually don't consider yourself as the creator of the experience. So I am totally subject to the society with its norms. And it's like, okay, I don't want to participate. I don't want to be part of it. But this is the contradiction in it. You say, I don't want to be part in it. I don't like it. But you actually don't realize with your participation that I can change it. I don't have to participate in that way.
Yeah, it's like we are the ones making it normal.
Yeah, yeah.
What did you want to say, Thomas?
I think that it's because we can't rely on like the ordinary common structures to go out and say loud in the speaker megaphone that life is fucked up. I mean, we can't expect politicians or government officials or anybody else really to go out and say that this world is beyond fucked up and it's life is really horrible the way we live it. I mean, but maybe that day will come someday that we have politicians such as ourselves taking responsibility and saying that we have to stop living the same old patterns of mind and to sort of free ourselves and to become responsible within that. And because reading her thoughts in the beginning of the book, reading her thoughts about whatever she thought was, or whatever she made up to be her reality, is like we say, very, very common. It is very common, and it's very, very, very much the way things are still lived with the ordinary single lady, whatever, 20s in Europe today. Yeah.
Yes. I agree with you.
You're not single. There's actually a cool quote from the book. I'm going to put it in the live chat.
Yeah.
I'll read it. Normality is merely a matter of consensus. That is, a lot of people think something is right, and so that thing becomes right. And now the other thing is when, you know, we act according to other people's expectations, and everyone is acting in expectation. No one is being themselves. You can't really figure out what people actually agree on, because for all you know, everyone inside themselves actually agrees on something else, but no one is voicing that.
Yeah.
And then you end up in a world where everyone is living the opposite of what they want to live, but simply because we don't communicate that, it's just not coming into existence.
Yes.
Very true. Like the elephant in the room, you might say. Also, I mean, what is the pressing point? What is the drama? What is the pivotal nitty-gritty details that is not addressed by hardly by any institution? Or, I mean, look at myself. I've been a mental patient for years. I've had over 100 commitments to hospital in Norway, and very few times where the doctor is able to gain my trust in such a manner, even at that level, being in the hospital, talking to the doctor in care in Norway, even at that level, with having myself, the symptoms sorted out, sort of the voices, the drugs, the whatever, and all those things sorted out, and then asking me, trying to go deep on myself, the doctor would try and to gain my trust and to see what was within me of circumstances and memories and trauma and events and beyond. And so there was, even at that level in Norway for many years, they were not able to gain that trust, and that is a point I think we lack. I mean, vocabulary and trust. I mean, for children to grow up today, I mean, we have an explosion in the last 10 or 20 years, particularly in the United States and Western countries, in children in mental hospitals. They're like this massive consumer group of drugs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't have vocabulary to express themselves, and yet also lacking the trust, like I did for my part, the trust to talk about what was really in depth going on within my mind. Where like the nitty-gritty, yes, stuff that I had to somehow express that I was not able to because of vocabulary and trust.
Well, it's very funny that you bring that up, because there's actually another quote from the book that talks actually exactly about it, and I'll copy it over just now.
Can you read it?
Yeah, I'm posting it now, and I'll read it.
Yeah.
Oh wait, it's too long. I'll post it in 2 parts.
I can read it.
Okay, you read it.
I'll just say that insanity is the inability to communicate your ideas. It's as if you were in a foreign country, able to see and understand everything that's going on around you, but incapable of explaining what you need to know or of being helped because you don't understand the language they speak there.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've also experienced a lot in my life, especially when I was younger. It's like there's all this stuff going on in the world, there's all these expectations, and it's like I don't really understand who I am within it or what is expected of me, and I assume that if I get older and later I might understand. Then I got older and older, and I still don't get it. It still doesn't make sense. Why do I have to do this? And you have all these questions, and everyone else is just doing it. You know, everyone's living their life, going to school, going to work, doing the whole family thing, and it's like, just want to scream like, wait, what are we doing? You know, why are we doing this whole rat race thing? So you end up with all this experience that you don't know how to communicate or verbalize because it's like not part of. We don't talk about our inner experiences and what we go through and the kind of questions we ask ourselves.
Yes, we don't do it. I also, it's astounding that, as you said, you think when you grow up or when you become an adult, you will understand. But it's kind of funny that becoming an adult is to realize that all adults have no clue. Also, you still don't have a clue. And this is, I can relate with that too, that sometimes things are going on within me, and I myself have I have no vocabulary to define it for myself or to verbalize what's going on within me, and it's like I don't know what's going on.
It's fascinating. With my own son Caesar, he's like 3 going on 4. He sees so much and he wants to express so much, but you can see within inside himself how he just doesn't have the words, he doesn't have the tools, and he's just a child. No one's going to listen to him, and he can see everything and he wants to communicate big things and it just doesn't want to come out. And by the time that you're an adult, and you've got the vocabulary, you've got the means, you've got the resources, by then you've kind of been dulled, you've been adulted to such an extent that when that moment is there and you can do all those things you wanted to do, you've already given up. That's that awful contradiction, kind of, that as a child everyone knows who they want to be, what they want to do in this world, but then over time it just dies off. By the time you can actually do what you wanted to do, you don't want to anymore. You just want to settle.
It's like we push into adulthood to suppress and deny and suppress and deny. But once we get there, it's just a lack of childhood.
So let's get back to the book story. Okay, so she tries to commit suicide. It fails, and she ends up in the mental hospital. And now there, some interesting stuff starts happening, because all of a sudden she's in a different world, the world of madness, where anything goes. What do you guys have to say about that part?
That was the part that the book started to be fun for me, where where the resistance was over. It was like, wow, the book is really cool. That is definitely the fun part of the book.
It's interesting because what she starts doing there is like, well, it happened. I'm now labeled mentally unstable. Now I can do and be whoever I want to be, and suddenly come out.
But in the beginning, there are those moments where she's insisting on that she's normal. She's normal. She's in the hospital, but she's normal. She's not like the other ones.
She is like herself or whatever, and it's interesting how she starts to communicate with the others and to study the other people in the hospital ward and getting to know them gradually. We get to know them through the book, and they introduce you to other patients, and it's interesting to have that sort of insight into the hospital. I think it's a very honest share of the westernized, stabilized hospital. I mean, this book, I read it. I think I read it first in 2003 or 4. I think after I had my first commitment, and it was helping me to sort of say that, okay, being in a hospital, having been a patient, having been living with the diagnosis schizophrenia and so on, really is a sort of identifying and dimension to it that is like not unique, but it's like its own character almost, or personality, because of the we hear about how we medicate with drugs, and pharmaceutical and psychiatry in the mass media is very much hyped up and polarized, of course, because of wanting to sell their news as fast as possible and to become the best knowing whatever within psychiatry and have the coolest and hardest and toughest or smartest opinions about psychiatry. and not really looking into the personal, physical question of who one is in such relation. But yeah, it's interesting to look into how she experiences this with the delicate conversations, intimate conversations, and yeah, it's interesting.
I was asking myself if how the hospital is described, if it is a realistic view on it, because to me it seemed to be like a very nice place.
It kind of just sounds like school.
Yeah, a bit like a kindergarten for adults. So I was really asking myself if this is a realistic view, because when I look, I never was in such a facility. So my preconceived ideas was more like a terrible place with more like a prison, like than like it is described in the book. So this is what I would like to ask you, Tormod, if this is a realistic description of a hospital.
Yes, very much so. I mean, this is in Slovenia in the 1990s, and my experience is from Norway in the 2000s and further on. And it's very much similar with I mean, I can literally see the white walls with very few decorations on the wall, a piano, very classical with a piano, and you know, the other people who are sort of like coming together in groups or in a group setting, and there's like this they call it the brotherhood, I think, and there's like this clique of people, of mental patients who are seemingly mental patients because they get to spend all their time eating free dinners and maybe some welfare check and being in a hospital, being all safe from the working, whatever stressful society. And they're just sitting there and talking, drinking coffee. And that's their thing. And it's very stigmatizing, of course, but it could be very realistic if you look at what they could potentially have been doing if life and circumstances were structured otherwise around them, that they could have a work that was like meaningful work or purposeful work, and so on and so on. So it's really interesting to see how she familiarizes with these surroundings and seeing how she can sort of do her thing within it all. That is interesting. How she sort of like there's like this flame or whatever that says I have to do my own thing, and she talks to this guy Edward and so on, and that she punches a guy in the face. I think also that's like you get a kick out of that sort of, and there are some interesting things here. Of course, I also remember all the very many characters and friends and foes that I have from hospitals and friends and relationships from hospitals that are really strong because they're so rooted in the adjustment of self, really. Yeah.
Now, what I also found interesting in reading this book is kind of like before you have like all these kind of like ideas about people who are mentally unstable and mental hospitals, and you make it like this big thing that is out there, and you just kind of want to stay away from it because you don't know anything about it, and everything sounds very complicated. And then as you read this book, you kind of see that, wait, these people are actually not that much different from me and other people I know. It's just they act more upon what they experience. And I'm reading this book, I'm also wondering if that's maybe not something that's also deliberately done, is making mental illness, mental instability something bigger than it needs to be, where it becomes kind of inaccessible to normal people.
Yeah.
Is that something you've experienced, Tormod?
Yeah, of course, and I felt separated from myself even when I would talk to people outside of psychiatry. And in Norway we have this very good welfare system, and it would be like this clique of people within the psychiatry or without psychiatry, and sort of like arguing or mentality around that within those terms that I would meet people and so on. But also I want to go back to the point about, because we are very much based on common denominators, because we all have what should I say, a heart, a belly, a head, a brain, and so on. We all human beings have very many things very much in common, and from that point we can draw conclusions and find common denominators. But it is circumstances and taboo and such that creates all these separations and personalities and divisions and exclusions and mind systems that make us separate from ourselves and from everybody else. Either we are a millionaire, or we are a soldier, or we are a schizophrenic, or we are a painter, or a politician, or we are a student, or we are a housewife. Whatever we are, we like this. We live in this accepted mentality boxes, and I think we need to look into that and start to see. Yeah.
What I also found nice in reading the book, and getting to know every different person's story, it's like, well, I could have been that person. I could see myself going down that path. Just because I didn't doesn't mean that I couldn't have done that.
Yeah, it could have been anybody, and it proves, and statistics also proves that it can be anybody.
Yeah.
And also, when I look at the story of the lawyer, her name is Mary. It's interesting to see that when her problems or her panic attacks starts to, that he has the support of her colleagues, working colleagues, but the moment she really she goes to the hospital, to the institution, it's like taboo. It's over. So it's okay. It's okay for you to be depressed and struggle in your life, but if you pass the point like of going into a institution or have it to be in treatment, then it's like over. Then it's
actually, not very supportive, because then a lot of people who actually need help are not going to ask for help.
Yeah.
And they're going to suppress it, and instead of being, mentally insane, it's just going to end up with all kinds of diseases to compensate for the inner turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a barrier to go into that doctor and to find yourself not wanting to take the drugs because it's chemicals and it's not natural, and you feel like you're having to accept that, what shall I say, terminology of being sick, of being sick.
Yes.
Because you get the welfare check because you're sick, you get hospitalized, and the drugs because you're sick. And that is a really tough pill to swallow for many people, to see that all these people on this earth and everything, I get to be sick. That's my destiny, sort of, and that's like tough pill to swallow, really, to face that and to realize that. But I think we just go to zoom out a bit and see that, okay, I have that diagnosis, but I know that all human beings on this earth have issues of their own, and we all have our challenges and so on, and to sort of float on that common denominator or commonality of it all, to sort of demystify it and to sort of also
what I've noticed with a lot of people, and even meeting you, Tormod, is that those who we label as mentally unstable, everything that exists within us exists in other people, but can be to smaller or greater extents. But the essential nature of, say, for instance, being depressed remains the same. It's just one person is going to be depressed, another person is going to take it to an extreme form of depression.
Yeah.
The one person is called sick and the other person is called normal, simply because of the spectrum within which they participate in.
I think that's about how the mind uses to, like, if you have a problem that the person A seems like a huge problem, it's a massive problem, and person B thinks that there's nothing, is to worry about it, it'll pass over, it'll go on, we can forgive it, whatever. But the difference is that the mind of person A zooms in on the problem and focusing on the problem, makes it up to, whoa, this is a big thing, and then the whole being, the whole living organism of that person experiences that as a huge, massive, difficult problem. because it is blown up by one's own mind.
And also the opposite happens, where normal people go through burnouts and breakdowns, and actually too little attention is put on it because, well, you can still function, you can still go to your job, you can still take care of your children, so actually you're quite fine. You know, you can still fulfill your purpose, type of thing.
Yes, and this is called normal then.
Yes, it's normal.
Yeah.
As long as you can still go to work, make money,
Yeah.
and to do your basic shit, it's not really a problem. It's a problem, but it's like still within the boundaries of the box. That's fine.
Yeah, in this big vortex that we live in, I mean, look at the politicians, how many crises they have today. I mean, they're like the politicians that are world leaders, whatever. There are so many crises about them. They are like proven wrong and do all these mistakes, and still they are allowed to be leaders, but they have all these masks, and yeah. I try to look at them to see if they can humanize a little bit, and I think they are. I mean, I think that we have to change.
Okay, so let's get back to the storyline of the book. So initially, before Veronika is committed to the hospital, she's constantly living according to what's expected of her. And now that she's in the mental hospital, she kind of like finds this never allowed herself to express. It's like, well, I actually have all these things here that I want to do and explore, but because I was keeping myself limited to what society expects of me, I've never been there. Ooh, at one point we forgot to mention is that in the book, she attempts to commit suicide and she fails, but then when she's committed to the hospital, she gets told that she's still going to die anyway.
Yeah.
There's also this awareness that she doesn't have long to live gives her time to reflect on things. And now she's actually starting to enjoy herself, because in this crazy world that she's in now, she can be whoever she wants to be. And she's like, shit, maybe I could have had more of that Veronika in my old life, and then I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything on that?
Yeah, I think. Go on.
I could relate as well on that. I was 2 years ago. I was in a hospital, and it was kind of life-threatening situation. So that is really interesting how once we become aware of that our life is not, on this planet, in this body, not endless, that we start to reconsider how we live, and but this really helps, because you cannot simulate like you're going to die tomorrow. This you cannot simulate such a thought. This is what I believe. And when it's really real, then it's so quick. You suddenly exactly know what you want. There's no time for mind fucks or self-deception. You know it all along, like, what do I want, really, without hiding within myself, without manipulating myself. There's no time for that. So I had that clarity. I knew exactly, like, who I am within my life, and what I want. And I also saw realistically what is possible, what is not possible. And that was really a gift. And it's for me, it's still like figuring out how can I have it without having that situation that my life is going to end soon.
Yeah, so how to take what you saw in that moment and make it a reality, regardless of
the polarity.
I suppose when your time runs out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's
actually quite interesting, Aga, because I had forgotten about that. So we have like the person with the near-death experience, and we have the mental hospital patient right here in the Hangout. You guys kind of bring everything together. It's so awesome.
And to see that.
Dermot, you wanted to say something?
yeah, I mean, to see that point of choosing to live, I mean, choosing that carpe diem moment that one has, that I have many times, to see that point about, and to see it beyond the polarity, to see it beyond the polarity, and to find grounding in self, and saying that yes, I stand here as this rock or tree or mountain or river or whatever, and I say that I want to live and I want to honor life equally for all, and so on. So that is a point, that one, that like awakening, whatever to call it, a rebirth, or yeah, this really cool point to work on for me anyway. It's really cool.
So it's like when you see, it's like she gave up, so she didn't like to continue her life, and in that giving up, it's like a spark within us is lost somewhere.
Yeah.
And I relate to that. I had a time where when I wake up or woke up, my first thought was like, again a day. And this is like, when for the last time did I wake up, as a child, where I was like, yeah, today I'm going to do this. And you wait for the day to come, and you're like, ooh.
And it's a brilliant, daring thing to do by the doctors. I mean, she's suicidal. She's going in a loop in her mind. She's suicidal, and she tried to kill herself. Ends up in hospital. So what they do is that they sort of hack into this loop of hers, and saying that yes, you're obviously going to die. They say, like to sort of fool her into breaking that circle and breaking that pattern sort of within herself. And that's what she does, and so on, and starts seeing more essence and, what shall I say, qualities of living where she is in the hospital, and discovering these new characters and friends and foes and patients within that hospital, and is discovering herself, and is describing also how she discovers herself, and it's an interesting tale. Yeah, it's definitely a good book to read.
Also, in the end, it's what she does. She kind of like takes that new Veronika that she never allowed herself to express, and she escapes out of the hospital back into the real world, but she's going to keep that flame kind of like alive. Like, wait, I see now, I actually do have a choice.
No.
Regardless of everything happening around me, I can decide who I am. And maybe I'm not going to go batshit crazy, but I can be a little bit more crazy. I can have a little bit more fun. And it's actually amazing, once you start doing that in your life, to just loosen up a bit and have some fun and express yourself, how just that little bit actually changes so many things, so many relationships.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's really, you see the process of her changing in the book. You can follow it, like where she realizes that it's her own application, her own doing. So it was all along herself, how she accepted her life and herself to be. And this part is a really cool one in the book, where you can, through Veronika, kind of with her realization, see, okay, it's how I participate in my life. So that, when I'm depressed and I wake up and I think, another day, so let's, how about waking up another way and find the things for which I want to wake up, create the things in my life.
Also to look at, okay, what are the things that are making me wake up like, bleh. And then maybe it's like, oh, I'm being too nice to this colleague, or I'm not being direct enough with that person, or maybe I should, voice myself more, or, it's all these little things. It's not other people, it's who you are in relation to these aspects in your life where you're constantly suppressing yourself. That's actually causing that experience of there's nothing to live for. Because you creating that within not allowing yourself to live. So it's kind of like a reverse cause and effect.
No, go ahead.
You're very cool point here about looking at one's loops in mind. It's not easy to just look at one's loops in mind. It takes some investigation to do that, some self-honesty, really. And I think it could be helpful to look at is the patterns. What are the habits or patterns in one's living that you see that, okay, I live this pattern, I think it's supportive to me because I have this feeling, and so on and so on. But you really take a moment to consider, perhaps open up for self and or to other people, talk about, I have this pattern of doing so and so and so and so and so. What do you think about that? Or should I change it, or to open up for oneself? Because that is the one thing that is one of the things that keeps us in a very much lockdown position, is that those same old routines, habits, addictions, patterns.
Yeah, because it's like we don't know how else to be or do other than what we have been doing. And I suppose for Veronika, that being committed to a mental hospital was kind of like a catalyst to see how else you can do things and how other people deal with things. Where, for most people, you don't have to go to that point where you committed to a mental hospital. There's lots of different people you can talk to, you can ask for help, lots of different people which you can learn from, essentially.
But for me, this it can be just a space that you create within your life, like an hour or 30 minutes in a day, where you create the space for yourself to be yourself and have that safe, condition in your life where you can be a little bit crazy, but not just think about it, but actually do it.
Yeah. Like turn up the music and dance, if you're always like rigid and not really taking up space, you're like, go crazy. See what that feels like.
Yeah.
And also writing, write down the things that you think about and how you view yourself. So I was talking with someone the other day, and they were looking at lots of things in their heads, but once they voiced what they were looking at, they immediately saw, but wait a minute, that's actually so ridiculous of me to look at things that way. And it's like, if we keep looking at things in our head, you don't actually see what you're dealing with. And the moment you start writing it down or you voice it, you actually, in that moment, have so much clarity and stuff you can work with.
I agree. And I look at the point of so many people that go to doctor or take medication without being seriously committed to hospital. I mean, I was addicted to going into the hospital, having that meal, having that clean shower or warm bed or whatever circumstance in the hospital. I was addicted to that experience. And for many people who sort of have this crisis or mind bother, you might say, polarity or whatever they have carry, they often go to the doctor and they end up sort of just molding on the problem and just can't get out of the mind box, sort of, because the metaphysics takes so much time and energy, and that's very dreading and it's very tiring to always be up thinking about what if I like this, what if it's like that, and thinking and all these things going on over and over and over again, patterns. Instead of really opening up those patterns and those personalities, those whatever, be honest with self and say, okay, I have this thought, I'm going to write it down, whatever the fuck it is, and to open up yourself, to introduce yourself to writing, Yeah,
and in relation to that point that you said you were addicted to being committed to a hospital, there's another cool quote on it that I just posted on the chat. Once in a mental hospital, a person grows used to the freedom that exists in the world of madness and becomes addicted to it. You no longer have to take on responsibilities, to struggle to earn your daily bread, to be bothered with repetitive, mundane tasks. You could spend hours looking at a picture or making absurd doodles. Everything is tolerated because, after all, the person is mentally ill.
Yeah, like the rock star and rock star living. Yeah, not give a fuck. You just surf along. Yeah. So.
I was never looking at it, but this is quite interesting, because it's really so that when you take the medication that mental disease people have to take, it's really very addictive medication. When you have
not so much the medication as well as the lifestyle, you're taken care of. You just be there and be alive and not really do much.
Exactly.
So in that sense, it's not actually a very empowering environment, because you're dealing with people who find themselves unable to navigate the world And actually what happens in the mental hospital is that it's just accepted that this
Yeah.
is how you are, or just a baby essentially. And they're actually in that perpetuating the problem and trying to solve it with medication, which is a nice, profitable way of dealing with the situation, but doesn't actually solve it. It just kind of keeps it going, and it looks like you're doing something about it, but in the long run, you're not really helping people.
And a smart man once said that psychiatry should be for people who cannot appreciate life. And that, I think, is a core issue. I think that maybe that statement, or that such a foundation, would open the doors to more, or more people that would need that commonsensical awareness of discovering self and so on. Because once we cannot appreciate and honor life, sort of, we should need psychiatry, and we do need psychiatry further on and so on, but it should be for people who can appreciate life.
Yeah, that's what would to have to be very huge. There would be like millions of people who would need that.
Well,
that's what
I think ideally, if you have like a system with mental hospitals, is that if people come in because they can't handle, the real world, you help that person to navigate the world, but at the same time, everyone would have to actually assess the real world and see if anything needs to change there as well. It's kind of like, it's a double thing.
Yeah, we are not changing the system itself. We are like coping with the consequences of it. Like we have the consequence of mentally sick people, and we gave them drugs, but we don't change the system. The stressful life, we never say, okay, how to change life to be less stressful for us all.
Because the
the mental hospital should actually be kind of like a feedback system to see, okay, how are we doing as a society? Do we need to change anything? Oh wait, this person's not coping. Why are they not coping? Is it personal to themselves? Is there anything we should change in how we run things?
And it's interesting, if you look at a case study such as 13 Reasons Why, the Netflix series, or 13 Reasons Why, which is a really cool, I think, movie series about suicide among high schoolers in the United States. And what this series cost was exactly a series of suicides, both in Norway and also elsewhere, I presume. And it goes to show that maybe we're not ready for that kind of awareness yet, that kind of realness, that kind of honesty, because once we take the lid off the box, I mean, everything just, if you can, it is really interesting because that series caused a series of suicides. And, the people talking about such an issue is very often, it's an interesting topic because
it's a taboo. How do you say it?
Taboo.
For instance, you will in Germany, you will bring in the news all sorts of news, but suicide is something you don't talk about. It's really deliberately because they saw that if there is suicide is brought up in the media, then there are more people committing suicide.
Yeah.
So it's really a taboo.
A magnet. Yeah.
But
by not talking about it, you're just compressing it more and more, and eventually someone's gonna open up their mouth about suicide, and it's just gonna explode. So that's not a solution either,
If you postpone it and wait later, even more, it's gonna have even more consequences that are far beyond greater. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And it's just separating those who committed suicide and the family and the relatives that are still here. They are really separated from the society. Then it's like very hard to address it.
Also from mothers, who have kids who attempted suicide, it's like they can't talk to anyone about it because there's this barrier, and they don't know who to go to just talk about it. There's just reactions coming at you.
Yeah.
And also to consider that we are very much in separation here, because if you look at, for instance, many African countries, the healthcare offer is to chain one's foot to a fucking rock or a concrete wall, And that chain, to be locked with a chain around one's foot to a wall or to a rock, is the mental health care they provide. And that's it. Or just a big dormitory. We just sleep in Indonesia. They sleep in their beds. There's without mattresses. That's it. So it's a very, very much difference, of course, to consider, because it's so in Germany, Norway, wherever. It's I can understand why we have so many refugees to come into our countries. Yeah.
I think it's also because, in those poorer countries, people are dealing a lot more with actual physical survival. And
Yeah.
in first world countries, people are more concerned with the survival of their ego. That becomes now the survival point of their personality and their social status. So that's why they're also more, I suppose, invested in taking care of other people, because of keeping that ego alive. Whereas for poor people in poor countries, they're focused on physical survival. So their care is to basically make them physically survive, not necessarily look after their mental health.
Yeah. So like, there is also a quote in the book, right? I don't remember it now, where the doctor, I don't remember his name too, doctor, where he's basically saying that depression is like a luxury problem of the first world.
Right. He also mentions the statistics that in Canada, which has like statistically the highest rate of happiness, the highest rate of depression. So the more happy you can be, the more depressed you can be.
Yeah.
Typically in Scandinavia also. His name was Igor. And it's really
Igor, right.
It's really interesting how depression is working its way through. I mean, looking at the polarity, it's really so simple that it becomes hard really to me to figure out something.
Yes, but I also think when he said now it's coming back, it's like the more happy you potentially could be in a country, the more people are in fact depressive. But the more happy you could be, I think this is a big lie in our society, where
well, it also depends on how do you define happiness. Because with people, like, the more money you have, the more you fear losing it.
Yeah.
So more ways that you are able to define your happiness, to say, I don't know, like through your Instagram account and your Facebook and this and that, the more you have these little tools that you use to create your happiness, the moment those start going like wrong, well, then you have got more of a capacity to be depressed. So it's like, what is your definition of happiness?
Yes, because this was also a point in my own experience, where it was like, why am I depressed? I have a job, I have a husband, I have a child, and I'm so depressed. So this is like, I should be happy, but I'm not. And this is also like a perceived happiness. So I would urge to question that too, how it's, happiness to have a iPhone or a car, and then people are wondering why they are in fact not happy.
Yeah, which is actually also exactly that which is shown in the book, is that, she's got a job. It's very easy for her to, pick up a guy and have a one-night stand. Her family, relationships are kind of fine. She has all those things, yet she's not happy. So what kind of creates that happiness? As you go through the book, you start to see it's about her. It's about who you are. How much do you allow to express yourself?
Mm-hmm. Right.
How one accept those loops in the head to just spin around and endlessly and going around over life's trivialities, and
Yeah.
All right, so I have to go in a few minutes.
Yes.
Do you guys have any finishing thoughts or comments you want to make?
That's it.
Cool.
So anyone who's struggling with this point of like, your life becoming dreary, not knowing what to do with yourself, check out this book, Veronika Decides to Die, because, you know, in walking her story, you don't have to walk it personally. You can walk it with her, through her, and come to some very cool realizations along the way. Tormod is showing the book.
Paulo Coelho.
All right, everyone, thank you for watching. If we ever happen to read the same book again by some strange coincidence, we will do another Hangout. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Pleasure.